Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about the Hollywood awards season. With the Golden Globes long over weeks ago, the next and final big show, the Academy Awards, is on its way. It will be arriving pretty soon at the beginning of February. These awards, also called the Oscars of course, well, they're also the biggest and most prestigious of the bunch. All the best of the best in filmmaking, acting, lighting, editing, and makeup and wardrobe, all of these fields get their chance to be honored at the biggest show in all of the industry. But with this heightened honor and heated competition, so too comes more calls and concerns for so-called diversity to start happening. Enter the social justice warriors, or other liberal-leaning folks like them, who every year for at least the past 5 or so now, they've complained about the Oscars supposedly being too white, and sometimes too male as well. A pretty racist and sexist complaint and claim, which would be considered offensive if it were directed at anyone else. But alas, this is where we are in the state of public discourse today, in current year, and even though I don't particularly like the Oscars or any award shows for that matter, but if they are going to spark starkly offensive and anti-American sentiments like this, and overt anti-white racism in the process too, well, then it does become imperative that someone speak up. And today, in this case, that someone is me. But tomorrow it could be you or someone else. So, to help us all think about and discuss this topic rationally and in a non-biased way, let's go over a terrible CBS News video about this story that specifically gets almost everything wrong in it too. I'll go over why beat by beat as we watch along, so let's just jump right into the clips and get this thing started.
The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is facing criticism over the lack of diversity in its Oscar nominations. Again, out of the 20 nominees in acting categories, only one person of color was nominated, and women were shut out of the Best Actor category. So Kevin Frazier, Best Director category, I'm corrected.
I love how news shows like this always get their black reporters out for these race-based pro-minority stories. Pretty transparent, but it always happens. Regardless, let's talk about the claims this lady appears to be a bit upset about. She said, again, in a pretty ticked off way too. But let's see if that's even warranted. First, she said out of 20 Best Acting nominees, only one person of color was nominated. Okay, before we even get into that, let's see if that's even true. Can't trust these supposed reporters these days, even if they are on a network news show. So first we have the category for Best Actor, and boom, right there in the middle is Antonio Banderas, a very dark, very handsome, very good-looking Hispanic man, who's usually considered a POC or person of color. Next we have the Best Actress category, and well, looky here, another POC nominee right there in the middle. So by just doing the littlest bit of research here, we can already see there are twice as many POC nominees as previously stated. I guess for some reason Banderas is not a POC because he's Spanish and from Europe or something, and it's more convenient for the SJWs behind this to have only one minority. Regardless, let's go with the show's number anyway. So for good measure, 1 out of 20 nominees are people of color. But is that even really that bad? I mean, only 13% of the United States population is black anyway, and sure, another 13% are Hispanic, but this lady isn't even counting Hispanics as colored nominees. And by the way, I hate saying people of color. It inherently sounds dated and somewhat racist, but these are the labels they're using themselves. Anyways, that means 1 out of 20, which comes out to 5%, and that's not even that far from the 13% they are in the population. One more nominee would make the nominees almost equal to the group's representation in our population. But we all know they don't want things to be equal or fair or representative. They just want more of their people, as many as they can get, because these arguments about trying to make things fair and balanced are just bullshit. The system is already as fair and balanced as it can be. It just doesn't have enough minority nominees, at least according to left-wingers. But what if, and let me put this kindly, not to alarm any soft-bellied, weak-willed leftists, but what if what's really going on here is the group here that's getting nominated more, they just happen to be doing better and perhaps are more talented and suited for this medium. Sometimes people are just better at some things. You might call that stereotyping, but those stereotypes are typically based on true, proven trends. For example, Asians tend to be better at math, which is something even the Asian presidential candidate Andrew Yang would brag about. And this propensity for being good at math, it's part of the reason Asians end up being better doctors and scientists. And another example would be that black people are really good at sports like basketball, football, or running or jumping events too. Next, Jewish people tend to be the best lawyers and also really good comedy writers. These examples might sound out there and they're hard to say at this point in this day and age with PC culture on the rise, but that doesn't mean they're not true. So with all that said, the real problem with the Oscars isn't that the nominations aren't diverse enough, it's that they're the wrong color. If they were all majority black nominees, none of these same people would be complaining about so-called diversity. Another example would be the National Basketball Association and their Most Valuable Player Award, which has been given to a black man for the last 13 years in a row. But have you ever heard an SJW complain about diversifying that award? No, it's only award shows and categories that are dominated by white people that get this kind of scrutiny. And that's because this isn't about diversity or fairness at all. It's about pushing anti-white racism.
So, Kevin, I feel like we, bring this conversation up every single year, and the Academy was working really, really hard to diversify the membership. It sort of recognized that part of the problem was that the membership voted on who to nominate, and the membership all looked the same. So they were going to change that. What has happened?
Is there really a problem with the membership all looking the same though? I mean, who's to say diversity is inherently better anyway? I know, sure, I can think of a few positives in ways that multiculturalism looks good on paper, more different people bringing in new thoughts and fresh takes and ideas, but what I can't stand is airhead reporters like this pushing this assumption that a group that's mostly white has a problem with it. I mean, that's the real implication here. If another group was, say, all black or Hispanic or Jewish or Asian, that would be totally okay. It could be encouraged even. Like, for example, groups like the NAACP. But time and time again, SJWs try and invade traditionally white spaces to tell us all we're racist and doing something wrong when we're not. Just goes to show who's more biased and obsessed with race here, doesn't it? I mean, there aren't white American people going around policing the non-diverse minority groups like the NAACP. No, it's only mixed race minority SJWs like this female anchor who think they have a right to bash white people, even though she's clearly half white herself. Those green eyes don't come from your black father who you never met, honey. It's your white mother who gave you those bright eyes, that fair skin, and she gave you a home and raised you into this troubled but somewhat successful reporter you are today. Also, I guess this shouldn't surprise us at this point, but this reporter lady named Anne Marie Green, well, she was also born and raised in Canada. So of course she's a radical SJW who hates anyone who's not brown.
If you remember, Anne-Marie, after the original controversy that led to the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite in 2015, the Academy began to add more diverse members. And each year, the nominees have looked slightly more diverse. But many feel that this year's nods are a disappointing step backwards.
How about instead of blaming the award show in the process, why not turn to the community and the artist and say, hey, you guys need to make better work? I wonder if these low IQ dum-dums on CBS even thought of that for 1 second. I mean, that's how I would read the situation, and I think anyone without bias and a little common sense would do so too. You look at these nominations and see a lack of diversity, as they put it. Well, to me that just means, hey, maybe blacks and browns didn't make any good movies this year. I know maybe that could sound racist, especially in this current year PC climate, but it's actually not. As we went over before, sometimes some races are better at some things. And this isn't to say they're inherently better or that's the way it's going to be forever and ever. No, all we're really saying here is, in the last year, the top movies getting nominated were mostly made and performed by whites and Americans and European descendants. Just like how last year, blacks dominated in basketball and football and maybe Hispanics dominated in soccer or something, and so on and so forth. This is the logical and right way to look at things. But we all know leftists aren't that way at all. They're insane, and they want to blame everything they don't like on unproven, implied racism, like what they're claiming is going on at the Oscars, even though it's not, and they've presented no proof of it.
But it's the films and actors that were snubbed that many are calling the real headline.
I made up my mind, I'm going back.
Harriet actress Cynthia Erivo was the only person of color nominated in the acting categories, and some say several strong performances by people of color were overlooked.
Okay, so far, I've seen their so-called snubs being shown in the background as pictures of Eddie Murphy, Awkwafina, and Jennifer Lopez. Are these really the best alternative nominations they could come up with? I mean, I like some of these guys and their work too, but I wouldn't consider them Oscar contenders. Not even close. Eddie Murphy's a comedian whose career was at a height almost 20 years ago. And Awkwafina is a comedian too who, sure, is more popular now, but she's far less entertaining or as good of an actor. And also, J-Lo is a famous pop singer who's more famous for her big butt and dancing than her acting skills. And sure, she can be great too in some comedies as a dashing but funny leading lady, but not as some dramatic actress. And especially not in this Hustlers movie where she plays some stripper who smokes cigarettes. That's not what we're talking about when we think of Oscar-winning performances. Basically, the point here is this. this. These jokers behind this Oscars So White stuff here on CBS, they don't even have proper replacement nominees to make the fields supposedly more diverse. It's not like we have some breakthrough amazing performances that are intentionally being snubbed because the actor's a minority. Not even close. What we really have is rabid SJWs who are desperate to squeeze more of their preferred races into everything. So they're suggesting we take away nominations from people who actually deserve it and give it to others who don't, just because of their race. It's basically like they want to affirmative action the award shows. Lower quality, lesser performances are to get special attention and consideration, despite them not being of the caliber of the best of the best. And in turn, what this causes is, like with real affirmative action, well, it causes less qualified people to get special treatment, thus diluting the whole playing field and the process. That means if the Oscars fully implemented this in this way, we wouldn't be giving awards to the best of the best anymore. They would go to the best sometimes maybe, but other times minorities will be nominated and win just because of their skin color. And this clearly neuters and undermines the whole process.
Jennifer Lopez in Hustlers for sure. Lupita Nyong'o in Us. Any of the actors from the Korean film Parasite.
Justin Chang is a film critic for the Los Angeles Times.
This year does feel like a return in a lot of ways to a kind of white male nostalgia.
Okay, the next replacement nominees come from this movie called Us, which was a weird horror film by Jordan Peele, another SJW, and it received mixed reactions at best. Then next was a film called Parasite, which isn't even an English language movie. Jesus H. Christ, guys. If these are the best so-called snubs you can come up with, then I think we can safely say they're not actually snubs at all. This is just a case of these movies not being good enough to get nominated. I mean, Parasite is a Korean film in the Korean language, and it already got 4 nominations anyway. But I guess that's not enough. It's never enough for these kinds of people. And now, to see how ridiculous this complaint is, just imagine the inverse for a moment. What if an American non-dubbed English language movie was released in select theaters in South Korea, and then it even happened to get a couple of nominations at a Korean Film Awards show, despite it not being in the local language? Then imagine if local Korean reporters complained that their award show was racist because too many Koreans were nominated there and they need more American nominations, or else. That sounds like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, yet these American SJW reporters are doing about the same thing here, and they have no clue how stupid they really look.
Criticism over the lack of diversity lit up social media Monday, many reusing the phrase Oscars So White, which attorney April Rain created back in 2015.
Overall, it's clear that there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
In response to Oscars So White, the Academy set a goal of doubling the number of women and minority members by 2020.
More affirmative actioning, which dilutes the entire field it infects, as we said before. And also, God, I hate that Oscars So White hashtag. This woman who created it here acts like she's some kind of hero for doing that, when really she's just an open and terrible anti-white racist. In the end, all of this Oscars So White bullshit is just a low-key way of saying Hollywood is racist, and also white people are the worst. And not once did anyone here mention the idea that maybe the minorities need to work harder and make better movies to get them nominations. No, instead, it's just implied that they aren't getting nominated because everyone else is racist. And to say Hollywood themselves are racist is pretty rich too, since they're the most progressive, liberal, left-leaning, Trump-hating, race-obsessed group of people out there. Funny how the left turns on themselves so quickly and so often, isn't it? I mean, does CBS here even realize they're calling Hollywood and the Academy terrible racist? I mean, I'm sure they do, but it's pretty absurd when you think about it like this. And it goes to show that when people like this are seeing a perceived aggression, they'll quickly blame it on racism without any evidence whatsoever. If they had some emails or quotes or some kind of video or proof that racism is why these nominations are happening this way, that would be one thing. But instead, they just look at something, see there's not enough minorities, and then racism is implied and assumed and believed to be true, and then propagated to the liberal masses via this CBS News TV show. What do you guys think? Are the Oscars too white? Should nominations be based on skill and merit, or is race a more important factor? Seems to be more important to SJWs, even though they are also the same types to nominate and vote for these awards within the Academy themselves. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.